Hello, class. I want to talk to you about energy today. There's energy is transferred in three ways. Energy is transferred by conduction, convection, or radiation. Heat always moves from a warm place to a cool place. I like this chart here where it shows a warm area and heat is moving to a cooler area. And it does this by conduction, convection, or radiation. And it does this until the temperatures balance out. Conduction is heat traveling through solids. When two solids touch, they have direct contact, and the direct contact reminds me of the D in the middle of conduction. In conduction, an object gets hotter from the movement of the molecules. All solid objects conduct heat. Some are better conductors than others. Metals are the best conductors. Here are some examples of conduction. You see a person touching the iron. That is a no-no, but that is direct contact, and that is conduction. A pot on the stove gets hot. The pot itself gets hot by conduction. This metal rod on the fire poker, gets hot. The heat travels up the metal rod. That's why the person is wearing gloves, so they won't get burned. Here we have conduction with another pan on the stove. The turtle is getting warm because the rock is warm. The turtle and the rock are solids. Here on the corner, we have another person trying to touch the stove and dad saying no. And so maybe mom can't tell, because that is conduction. We have a spoon in a coffee cup. The spoon, the coffee cup. The spoon is getting warm by conduction. Now, talking about conduction, we're talking about conductors. Conductor is a material that can conduct heat or electricity very easily. Some good examples of conductors are metals like copper, aluminum, gold, silver, steel. These are all metals. Any kind of metal is a good conductor. Other good conductors is water. Actually, you are a good conductor, and other animals. An insulator is the opposite of a conductor. An insulator does not let heat flow easily through it. So some good examples of insulators are glass, porcelain, plastic, and rubber. Either plastic covering or a rubber covering over wires so you won't get electrocuted. Heat does not travel through clothing, wool, or wood very easily. Now, another way of transferring heat is by convection. Convection is when heat travels through liquids or gases, things that flow. So the molecules heat up, the heat makes the molecules move more rapidly, and the molecules expand and become less dense, so they float or they go up to where it is not so dense. This creates currents in liquids and gases. Hot air rises and cold air sinks. So you have a flow of the liquid or a flow of the gas. Convection, and we'll read the middle one first. Uneven heating of our atmosphere produces huge convection wind currents. Like we have this is a sea breeze and this is a land breeze, and this happens because of the way the air is warm, the water is warm, and the land is warm at different times. The uneven heating of our ocean creates ocean currents, like the Gulf Stream. And scientists use these global patterns of weather to predict what's coming up. Examples of convection, where things flow. We have a convection of the water is heating up inside the kettle. The water is heating up and flowing inside the pot. You may have seen water boiling and then moving around. We have steam, which is another way of convection. And we have a vent, the vent that makes airflow into your room. It starts with the V, and that reminds me of the V, convection. Vent and convection remind me that things flow. Hot air rises and cool air sinks. As you can see, is a diagram of a room with a heater, and the warm air rises, goes heats the top of the room, it cools off, and it goes back down, and then it gets heated up. And this is a current or a flowing pattern. Water movement. So we have we have a pan that's heated up. We have hot water rises. It cools, it sinks, it gets heated again, it cools, it sinks, and so forth. The third method of heat transfer is called radiation. How does heat energy get from the sun to the earth? Well, we know that there's no molecules or particles between the sun and the earth. It is just space. It's the space between matter. So Earth and the sun cannot get heated by conduction or convection. They are heated by radiation from the rays, the radiation of the sun. In radiation, there's no movement of molecules to transfer the heat. You might feel warm to the touch, and heat radiates from waves. But listen, this is the most important one. Radiation is the release of individual heat energy, waves from the sun or fire, from a distance or through space. Examples of radiation are, of course, the sun shining on the earth, you sitting beside the fire, getting warm across the room. Here's another person getting warm across the room from the fire. An example of radiation is an X-ray, or you might have rays coming from light. Conduction and convection and radiation. Here's the difference. The fire, actually, depending on where you are or what you're doing, you could demonstrate all three methods of heat transfer. If the air above the fire is warm and you warm your hands in the air, that is convection because the air is getting warm. If you're warming across the room and not really touching the fire or on top of the fire or across the room, that is radiation. If you put something solid in the fire and the heat travels up the solid, that is conduction. How heat is transferred? Heat is transferred in three ways: radiation, conduction, and convection. Radiation is from the rays, conduction is from a solid touching the pan or the pot, and convection is the liquid or gas that is flowing. Here again, one of my favorite diagrams of how hot moves to cold, and it does this until the temperature balances. Now, ask you some questions. Losing or gaining heat? Ice is cold, the air is warm, so the ice cube gains heat. It is getting warmer. Coffee is warm, the air is cool. We move from a warm place to a cool place, so the coffee loses heat as it sits there. Is a bubble bath gaining or losing heat? Well, the bubble bath is losing heat. And you know that because when you sit in the bath, eventually the water gets cool. Is the ice cream gaining heat or losing heat? Well, we know that the ice cream is gaining heat because it's getting warmer and melting. That is all I have today. Thank you for listening and watching about energy in fifth grade.